Ginsai.com. Ginsai.com.
Welcome to the lesson on inheritance. Inheritance is an important feature of any object-oriented programming language, and let's see how it works. According to dictionary.com, in object-oriented programming, or OOP, the ability to derive new classes from existing classes. A subclass inherits the variables and methods of the superclass and may, dare I say should, add its own new variables and methods. A practical definition or a practical way of thinking about inheritance is never start with an empty editor window and type in all the code yourself. Find an existing class that does most of what you want and build on top of it. Is there a class that has 80% of the variables and methods you need? Build on top of it and you only have to write 20% of the code. That's code reuse. Don't build from scratch, build on top of something that works. A non-computer example of inheritance. Let's say you want to build a tow truck. You could start buying parts. You could buy an engine, a transmission, a chassis, a tow harness, and all sorts of other parts, and put them together piece by piece. Or you could go down to the Ford dealer, buy a Ford F-350 pickup truck, which is 95% of what you need, remove the bed of that truck, bolt on a tow harness, and bam, you've got a tow truck. See what I'm talking about? Build on what exists. The pickup truck is 95% of what you need. Why build a tow truck from scratch? Same with software. Why build it from scratch when there's already existing software you can build on top of? Inheritance terms. Part of the difficulty of learning inheritance is everybody uses different terms to describe the same thing. The key to understanding inheritance is to understand the terms used to describe inheritance. In Java, the keyword extends says we want to create a new class out of an existing class. The following terms are used to describe these two classes: superclass and subclass. Superclass is the existing class and subclass is the new class. Parent class and child class. Parent class is the existing code we're going to build on top of, and child class is the new class we're creating. Base and derived. Base class is the existing class we're going to build on top of, and derived is the new class we're creating out of it. Each term on the left is the existing class, and the term on the right is the new class we're creating out of the existing class. Let's look at a line of code. Public class Vampire extends enemy. In this example, class Vampire is the new class that is created by extending the existing class enemy. Vampire inherits the variables and methods of enemy. Vampire is known as the subclass, and enemy is known as the superclass. Java prefers using the term superclass subclass when describing this inheritance relationship. All throughout the Java documentation it uses these terms, and even the command super is part of the Java language. Public class zombie extends enemy. In this example, class zombie is the new class that is created by extending the existing class enemy. Zombie inherits the variables and methods of enemy. Zombie is known as the child class, and enemy is known as the parent class. I prefer using the terms parent and child class because they match the term inheritance. A child inherits eye color or hair color from a parent. We understand inheritance is the child receiving something from the parent. And that's exactly what happens. Zombie receives variables and methods from enemy. So that's my preferred set of terms. Public class Mutant extends enemy. In this example, class Mutant is the new class that is created by extending the existing class enemy. Mutant inherits the variables and methods of enemy. Mutant is known as the derived class, and enemy is known as the base class. Some books use the terms base and derived class. The word derived means created from something else. The word base means something that you can build on. Mutant is derived from or based on class enemy. Having three sets of terms to describe the new and existing class when doing inheritance is not ideal. Different programming languages, textbooks, or online documentation use different terms, and we have to live with it. Just don't mix and match the terms. A lot of this boils down to programming language. Java likes Superclass, Subclass. A lot of C++ documentation uses derived and base class. It depends on the website, the book, and the programming language you use. Now remember, the new class or subclass is created from the existing class or the superclass. The only thing I don't want you to do here is mix and match terms. Never say the subclass was created from the parent class or the derived class was created from the superclass. Do not mix and match terms. Now, here's the meat of inheritance. Here's where you can see how it works. When you build an object from Subclass Vampire, it's going to have all the variables and methods from Vampire, plus all the variables and methods from the Superclass enemy. So this line of code, Vampire, vamp object equals new vampire. This is creating a vampire object using the reference vamp object. You can see what I've put inside my vampire object. It's obviously, as a vampire object, going to have all of vampire's variables and methods. Duh. But since vampire extends enemy, it will clearly also have enemy's variables and methods. That's what inheritance means. Vampire extends enemy, so it has both vampire variables and enemy variables. Vampire extends enemy, so it has both enemy methods and vampire methods. Zombie, zom object equals new zombie. Just like a child may inherit blonde hair from their mother and blue eyes from their father, class zombie inherits the variables and methods from the parent class enemy. Now, when I show you the picture of this zom object, remember, is a reference to the zombie object. It's a zombie object, so of course it's going to have the zombie variables and the zombie methods. But zombie extends enemy, so a zombie object will also have enemy variables and enemy methods through inheritance. That's the meat of inheritance. That's exactly what inheritance means. When I extend or inherit from another class, I get all the variables and methods from that class. Mutant, mut object equals new mutant. When the derived class mutant extends the base class enemy, it starts with all of the enemy's variables and method and adds its own variables methods. The resulting object has both sets of variables and methods. So obviously I'm building a mut object. It'll have mutant's variables and methods, but it'll also have enemy's variables and methods. Again, that's the meat of inheritance. Expect to have the variables and methods from both classes. In object-oriented programming, or OOP, the ability to derive new classes from existing classes. A subclass inherits the variables and methods of the superclass and may, dare I say should, add new variables and methods. Inheritance allows code reuse. We want to write the code once in class enemy and use it in vampire, zombie, and mutant. Anything that we put in class enemy will automatically be picked up by vampire, zombie, and mutant. Parent and child class design.
Gingside.com